Welcome to another episode of Stand on Guard. I'm your host, David Krayden. When we come back in a few moments, how liberals are exploiting the Jasper wildfire and the latest on the attempted assassination of Donald Trump in the aftermath. Be right back.
So we are in a very precarious position in this country. We need political change, but we also need the resolve to resist.
Yes, please ring the bell. Smash it if you must. But like this broadcast so we can continue to beat YouTube suppression and Trudeau's censorship. And we've got a comment from Trudeau in the show later on that Tofino ambush interview with Ken Bext that I think you're going to like. He responds to the obvious charge that the online harms bill is a censorship bill, and Trudeau lies through his teeth. But let's have a look at what's happening in Jasper, Alberta. For those of you who don't know the area, I spent some wonderful times there. And my father actually worked at the old Canadian Pacific hotel chain, which the Jasper Park Lodge used to be a part of, as well as the hotels like the Empress in Victoria and the Banff Springs, of course, and Banff just down the road from Jasper. But this is beautiful country, and there's a fantastic golf course there. Fortunately, most of the Jasper Park Lodge has been preserved, including the original iconic lodge itself, which is really a piece of history. Bing Crosby and other Hollywood stars from the golden age of movies used to vacation there. So there's a lot of memories for me in Jasper, and apparently also for Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, who I think delivered a very emotional message here. I just want to watch some of it.
Our grandparents visited to experience the majesty of this place with its mountains and lakes and meadows. They took our parents, who then took us to this special spot that they'd spent time in as children. And now we take our own kids and our own loved ones and visitors from around the world to feel that same feeling that you get with your first glimpse of the mountains on the horizon. A feeling that even though you've just left home, you're coming home. And so although those of us who experience Jasper as visitors can't imagine what it feels like to be a Jasperite right now, we share the sense of loss with all of those who live in the town, who care for it, and who have helped build it. Jasper, we will continue to stand by you, and as everyone works to get their feet back under them, and as we look forward to recovery. Right now, the wildfire is still out of control, and crews are working in dangerous conditions to try and protect critical infrastructure in the town. So to the brave men and women currently on the ground in Jasper, I want to express my deep gratitude and the gratitude of all Albertans. Whether you are part of the initial efforts or whether you were activated and drove in there last night or early this morning, there really are not enough words to express our thanks and our wishes for your safety and your success. Once again, you've put yourselves on the front lines in a show of true heroism. Thank you for your bravery and your commitment to keeping Albertans safe. Well, I will leave the specific details on the situation and the efforts of those fighting it, to Ministers Todd Lowen and Minister Mike Ellis, as well as to our Alberta Wildfire officials here with us today, Stephen Lacroix from the Emergency Management Agency and Christy Tucker from Forest. Let me assure you that Alberta is doing all that we can. Our Emergency Management Cabinet Committee meeting has been meeting daily for the last several days, and will continue to do so. I have been in communication with the...
And of course, who does Ottawa send out to help? No one else but the Minister of Emergency Preparedness, Harjit Sajjan, that incompetent fool who bungled the Afghanistan withdrawal by appeasing his friends in the Sikh community who were donating money to his constituency riding association. So he helps out Afghan Sikhs before Canadians and before Afghan translators who worked for those Canadians. Incompetent Minister of Defense. This is the same clown who said he was a hero fighting the Taliban. So they sent this, they couldn't prepare for an emergency if his life depended on it. But I'll play a little bit towards the end here where she really makes an emotional appeal.
Jasper home, we will recover from this. To the men and women on the front line and at all operational levels, thank you for your courage and commitment. And to those in Alberta and around the world who have experienced the magic of Jasper. The magic is not lost, and it never will be. Alberta's government will provide the support needed to families and community to recover and to rebuild stronger than ever so that future generations can continue to experience this one-of-a-kind community and to feel the magic of being able to come home.
So, of course, the environmental extremists are blaming this all on the weather, aka climate change. Won't say it too loud. Yeah, it's all because of the weather. Just every wildfire is always the result of the weather. Not bad environmental practices, not bad forestry practices, not incompetence in clearing old brush. This has been pointed out in other jurisdictions as well, in the same places, of course, where it's always the weather's fault every time there's a wildfire or a flood. Of course, this is called exploiting a natural disaster. This is called exploiting people's misery for political ends, for ideological gains. Disgusting. That's what we come to expect from environmental extremists. They never want to blame bureaucracy or government misuse or government incompetence. It's always the weather. Anyway, speaking of incompetence, and my heart goes out to Daniel Smith in that video. I've known Danielle for over 20 years. We both wrote at the Calgary Herald a couple of decades ago now. And I think overall she's doing a great job as premier. I have a few complaints, but I'm not going to raise those right now. She's got a lot on her plate, and I think she's handling it very well. And this is not a time to point fingers about the weather. But as I said, speaking of incompetence, in the aftermath of the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, now we're almost 2 weeks after this now, it gets worse every day, folks. There's more questions. How many shooters now? Because when we reported the other day, when the now resigning director of the Secret Service, Kimberly Cheadle, was in front of the Congressional Oversight Committee, the House Oversight Committee, she suggested there might have been more than one shooter. That was about the only piece of information she allowed to get through the Velcro lips. And of course, she was an utter disaster, not only at the committee meeting, but during the day of this event. She clearly was not in control in any sense of the word. And there's more coming out about this every day. We know, for instance, look at this report here. This is the guy who was arrested for a very short period because he was on the same bike that was at the scene of the attempted assassination, believed to be owned by the shooter. Thomas Crooks. Now, did this guy steal his bike? What is he doing with the same bike, with the same knapsack on it? Let's have a look at this. This is some kid on TikTok who interviewed this guy because he heard he had been arrested and questioned by the FBI and the ATF, alcohol, tobacco, and firearm. What the hell are they doing involved in this at all? They're all a bunch of incompetent organizations that are politically motivated and are nothing more than mechanisms of the Democratic Party and the Biden-Harris administration. Listen to
What do you
this.
think about me being detained for a couple hours because they thought I was involved?
That happened?
Yeah. Bomb squad had me for about an hour. Then the ATF had me. Then they took me in to sit and talk to the FBI. ATF come back in and says, Mr. Evans, we're getting you out of here.
They thought you were the shooter.
No, they thought I had the bomb.
Did you have the bomb?
I don't know if they ever found a bomb.
Interesting response.
You'd be scared if you saw what's going on in my mind.
How come?
Because there's a lot of shit going on up there. I could fix everything.
Like in the country or mechanically?
Mechanically. I could fix a lot of shit and make things right again.
It's a pretty sweet bike.
A buddy of mine gave it to me a couple years ago and decided I'm going to ride it cross country.
Have you done it yet?
I'm on my journey now.
Oh, what?
Now I'm stalled here.
Where are you going?
Boise.
Oh, you're making it out to Idaho.
I gave myself 100 days. If we get out of here today, we're going to be at the convention tomorrow.
The Trump thing?
Yeah.
Sources telling us the last sighting of Crooks, he had a backpack, but no sign of a gun.
He had a backpack, but no sign of a gun.
Now, what does that look like? Is that the same bike? And this guy was arrested in connection with the shooting, released. What don't they want this man to say? How many people were involved in this? And this is clearly, the more you examine this, and as the days go by, it gets worse in terms of this being an inside job. Now, is that a conspiracy? Well, every time more than one person participates in the planning of an event, like a shooting or an attempted assassination, that's by definition a conspiracy. And the reason this is unraveled so quickly around the FBI, the Secret Service, the ATF, and the Biden administration is because people are doing the research themselves. And I'll show you a website here. This guy is phenomenal. He's a bit of a gun nut, but he does phenomenal research. And there's been all kinds of interesting takes on this. People have examined the audio signature, demonstrating that this is not the same gun that you're hearing. Some of the shots are closer to Trump, others are farther back. There's new footage of somebody on the water tower. It's not this black blob footage that we've seen originally. This is clearly an individual in a black jumpsuit of some kind who's kneeling on top of the water tower, and it looks like he has a rifle in his hand. This is but more interesting. Let's watch this take here, because this is absolutely fascinating.
2, 3, 4, 5 right there. No more guys up here.
So he just counted 5 shell casings. You can see the timestamp here. Okay, so 5 shell casings. Listen again.
2, 3, 4, 5 right there.
Which would be where they ejected from based on the Thomas Crooks position.
No more guys up.
No more guys up here. No more guys up here. Don't let them come up here. Now, look at this timestamp, 20 minutes later.
Both sides. Looks like what, at least 8? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8. At least 8.
And he's pointing to the other side of Thomas Crooks. How did these other shells wind up? These shell casings wind up on the other side of Thomas Crooks. We know the ejection port. 20 minutes goes by before they find the other 3. And no, don't let anybody else come up here.
So I think that was explained quite clearly. The initial examination found 5 shell casings. 20 minutes later, and nobody has been allowed to come up on the roof. There's suddenly 8. Were those planted? We haven't even seen any of this evidence. And I'm suggesting a lot of it is going to disappear, just like the crime scene site was contaminated immediately. We have people walking around, everybody taking these pictures. Looks like they're impaired. It's like watching the Blair Witch Project with the camera going in every direction. Nobody seems to know what the hell they're trying to do. There's no attempt to seal off the site. In fact, I was watching a podcast today, Benny Johnson, which I worked with Benny at the Daily Caller a few years back. He went to the site with a couple of forensic experts and discovered that there was no attempt by any of the authorities, local, state, or federal, to lock down the site and impede anybody from going on and just walking around everywhere. The site has been completely contaminated. We don't even know if they have got those shell casings anyway. We could tell if they're from different kinds of rifles because there's an acoustic. Sorry, there's a signature on all bullets. In any ballistics report, you can tell if this bullet came from this gun or gun B. Anybody who's watched cop shows knows that much about ballistics. That technology has been around for a century or more. So this is all nonsense. And you've all seen the footage of this guy being cited by at least a dozen people, maybe more. The people literally calling to the police, to the Secret Service, to anybody in authority to say, hey, there's a guy up there with a rifle. And he's looks like he's going to shoot the president. Nobody makes any attempt to stop him until he starts firing. And we know that there's probably a second shooter because the line of the bullet that grazed about 5 people doesn't look like it came from the direction of the building that Crooks was on top of. It looks like it's coming from the direction of the water tower. So all of this stinks. And by the time we get any investigation, official investigation from the FBI, which is another organization well past its prime, totally politicized, we are going to know all of the answers because there are people already working out the solution on social media. In fact, if you watch the news, the mainstream media, it's taking its cues now from social media in terms of reporting the story. Because it's social media people who are out there getting the raw data, examining what little evidence that they can get their hands on. And some of this video footage is horrible. But I can tell you, you're not going to get a straight story out of the FBI. You might get a good congressional report, but once again, it's going to be way after people have made up their minds that this was a bad inside job. Probably a combination of inside job and incompetence. No organization can be that incompetent unless there's malice involved. And clearly that's what was happening here. So it is absolutely disgusting how this has been allowed to happen. But what is even more amazing than that is that there weren't more people killed because clearly there was perhaps two, maybe even 3 shooters all of them had ample opportunity to get off a series of shots. And why they were unsuccessful is, I think, another reason why this is only explainable through divine intervention. Because I think the authorities behind this thought they had Trump in their sights, and they were going to get him, and they weren't going to rely on just one shooter the same way they didn't rely on one shooter to kill John F. Kennedy in 1963. This is another example, but in this case, the bullet did not hit its mark, and somehow all of the other bullets didn't find their mark, with the exception of that one innocent bystander, the fire chief, who's heroically saved the life of his wife and daughter. But this is a black day in American history, and I don't think we're going to. I just hope some of the pundits out there who are suggesting it ain't over for these attempts will continue against Donald Trump. I hope they're wrong. But you know that something historic happened that is really revealing the dark, seedy underside of American politics at the moment. So I want to close by showing you another brief clip with Justin Trudeau on the beach with Kean Bext, who I was supposed to interview yesterday. We had some logistical problems here at the house, and I wasn't able to do that. I've been trying to get a hold of Kean all day. I think he's traveling, but I will have him on to discuss this video because I think he did a superb job. But here's Justin Trudeau trying to justify the Online Harms Act. Listen to this.
You are passing a bill right now. You're pushing through a bill that's it's called the Online Harms Act, and you're sort of putting a bunch of policy in behind protecting children. You say it's all about protecting children, but that bill is actually going to censor Canadians' ability to access the internet, to exercise free speech. Why put those two bills together? Why not separate them?
First of all, it's actually not doing any censoring of the internet, and it's entirely focused on protecting kids. So,
Lie.
My kids spend an awful lot of their life dealing with me as Prime Minister. Every now and then, I get to go away and watch my kids playing in the water. And this is the 10 days I get on vacation for the entire summer. And as you know, I work more days a week than the vast majority of Canadians.
I'm sorry, I can't watch anymore right now. Do you hear that? First of all, the Online Harms Act has got nothing to do with censorship. That's all it has to do with. It's not protecting children to any greater degree than existing laws already do. It's in that regard, it's a completely redundant piece of legislation. Except that's not what it's about. It's not about protecting children. It's about taking away our basic rights of free speech. And for Trudeau to suggest he works harder than average Canadians, I don't think he's never known the meaning. He's never had a real day of work. He won't even read policy documents. He won't read the memos that come across his desk. They bore him. He spends his time watching cartoons, reading pulp fiction, and essentially being a man who never grew up. And that is, to me, the worst indictment of Justin Trudeau, when he actually is so delusional. He thinks he's working harder than you or I or any other average Canadian. And all he gets is 10 days a year vacation. His life is a vacation from reality and a vacation from real work, which he's never had to do, ever. He's always been a privileged elitist who thinks he's better than anybody else. And that interview, no matter how many questions Kean asks him about policy, Justin Trudeau always goes back to the narcissistic center, to say that I worked so hard and how dare you interrupt my vacation here on the beach. And that to me is just emblematic of the kind of man Justin Trudeau is and how he really despises ordinary Canadians, whom he will never understand because he never has met one. Thanks for watching today, folks. We'll be back to normal tomorrow, and I'll be continuing the report throughout the weekend. We appreciate your support. Please push this video up, and I'll talk to you again tomorrow.